In the ancient lands of Israel there lived a man unlike any other. His name was Samson. He was chosen by God before he was even born, set apart for a special purpose. Samson was blessed with a strength that was not of this world. It was a divine gift, a power that made him a legend among his people, the Israelites. They saw in him a protector, a champion who could stand against their enemies, the Philistines. Samson carried this great power within him, a quiet force waiting to be unleashed. He was a Nazirite, bound by a sacred vow to God, a vow symbolized by the long, uncut locks of his hair. This was his secret, a covenant between him and the divine, the very source of his incredible might. One day, as Samson journeyed toward the city of Timnah, his path crossed with a creature of pure ferocity. A young lion, its mane wild and its eyes burning with hunger, emerged from the vineyards. It let out a roar that echoed through the hills, a sound that would send any ordinary man running in terror. But Samson was not an ordinary man. He felt no fear, only a surge of divine power flowing through his veins. He stood his ground, his gaze fixed on the approaching beast. The people of his tribe had heard tales of his strength, but they had yet to witness its true, raw potential. This encounter would be the first real test, a moment that would forever define him in the eyes of all who knew him. The lion lunged, its claws extended and its teeth bared, ready to tear him apart. In that split second, Samson moved with a speed and force that defied belief. He met the beast head-on, not with a sword or a spear, but with his bare hands. His muscles tensed, becoming like bands of iron. He grabbed the lion's jaws, a feat that seemed impossible. The struggle was intense, a whirlwind of dust and fury. Samson's heart pounded not with fear but with a powerful certainty. He felt the Spirit of God upon him, transforming him into an unstoppable force of nature. He was more than a man in that moment. He was an instrument of a higher power. With a final mighty effort, Samson tore the lion apart, as if it were nothing more than a young goat. The fearsome roar was silenced forever. He stood panting, the lifeless body of the great cat at his feet. He looked at his hands, marveling at the power they held. This was the beginning of his legend. The story of this incredible feat would spread like wildfire, whispered in awe from village to village. Samson, the man who could defeat a lion with his bare hands, was no longer just a promise. He was a reality, a living testament to the power of his God and a symbol of hope for his people, who lived in constant fear of their powerful Philistine neighbors. News of Samson's battle with the lion spread quickly, and the people were filled with amazement. They had never seen such strength in a single person. Men would gather in the marketplaces, their voices low with wonder as they recounted the tale. "Did you hear? He tore it apart with his bare hands." The story grew with each telling, painting a picture of a hero sent from the heavens. The Philistines, who ruled over the Israelites, also heard these stories. At first they dismissed them as mere folklore, exaggerated tales meant to boost the morale of a conquered people. They could not imagine that one man could possess such a threat to their dominion. Samson's power was not limited to that single, incredible moment. His strength became a weapon against the Philistines. In one famous account, he was bound with 2 new ropes, his enemies certain he was captured. They brought him to their camp shouting in triumph, but as they celebrated, the Spirit of God rushed upon Samson. The ropes snapped from his arms as if they were threads touched by fire. The Philistines watched in horror, their victory turning to dust before their very eyes. Their cheers turned into cries of panic as they realized the stories they had dismissed were terrifyingly true. This man was not just strong, he was a force of divine judgment. Seeing a fresh jawbone of a donkey lying on the ground, Samson picked it up. It was a crude and unlikely weapon, yet in his hands it became an instrument of immense destruction. He charged into the crowd of stunned Philistine soldiers, swinging the jawbone with relentless force. He moved like a storm, unstoppable and overwhelming. The soldiers, who were trained for war and armed with swords and shields, were no match for this one man and his simple weapon. They fell before him one by one, their numbers meaning nothing against his divinely granted power. The battlefield was a scene of chaos, all orchestrated by the might of a single Israelite champion. When the dust settled, 1,000 men lay defeated. Samson stood amidst the silence, breathing heavily but unharmed. He had single-handedly struck a massive blow against the oppressors of his people. The Israelites who witnessed this or heard of it were filled with a profound sense of awe and hope. Their champion was real. He was powerful. He was their protector. Samson's feats of strength became legendary, a constant reminder to the Philistines of the power that lay dormant within Israel. He was a symbol of defiance, a walking miracle whose every act of power shook the foundations of the world around him. In the valley of Sorek, there lived a woman named Delilah. She was a Philistine, known throughout the land for her captivating beauty and charm. When Samson saw her, he was immediately enchanted. Her eyes held a depth that seemed to pull him in, and her voice was as smooth as honey. For Samson, who had spent his life defined by his immense physical strength and his role as a warrior, Delilah represented something different. She was a world of softness, romance, and peace, a stark contrast to the violence and conflict that so often surrounded him. He fell deeply in love with her, believing he had found a partner who saw the man behind the legend. Their days together were filled with laughter and tenderness. Samson would rest his head in her lap as she told him stories, her fingers gently running through his long, thick hair. In these moments, he was not the fearsome warrior who could slay 1,000 men. He was simply a man in love. Delilah made him feel understood and cherished. He showered her with affection, trusting her completely. He felt a sense of belonging with her that he had never known before. For a time, their love seemed like a perfect sanctuary, a peaceful haven where the burdens of his divine calling could be set aside, and he could just be Samson. However, the Philistine lords saw Samson's love for Delilah not as a romance, but as an opportunity. They were desperate to neutralize the threat he posed. They approached Delilah in secret, their words like poison wrapped in silver. "Find out the secret of his great strength," they urged, "and how we can overpower him." They offered her a fortune, an amount of silver so vast it would ensure she lived in luxury for the rest of her life. Delilah was faced with a choice. Her heart felt a pull towards Samson, but the allure of wealth and the pressure from her own people were powerful forces. A seed of curiosity and greed was planted in her mind. Delilah began her campaign with gentle questions. "Tell me, my love," she would whisper, "what makes you so strong?" 3 times Samson gave her false answers, toying with her. He told her if he were tied with fresh bowstrings or new ropes, he would become as weak as any other man. Each time, Delilah would test his words, calling in hidden Philistine soldiers only for Samson to break the bonds with ease. Samson saw it as a game, a playful dance between them. He did not see the growing frustration in Delilah's eyes or the cold determination that was slowly replacing her affection. He was blinded by his love, unable to see the trap that was closing in around him. Delilah's persistence became a constant pressure. Her playful questions turned into tearful pleas and accusations. "How can you say you love me," she cried, "when you won't trust me with your secret? You are just making fun of me." Her words were like a slow, steady chisel chipping away at Samson's resolve. He was a man who could break ropes and kill lions, but he was defenseless against the emotional weight of the woman he loved. He felt torn. His vow to God was sacred, the very core of his identity and power. But the thought of losing Delilah, of seeing her constant sadness, was a pain he could no longer bear. Finally, exhausted and emotionally worn down, Samson gave in. He told her everything. He confessed that he was a Nazirite, consecrated to God from birth. "A razor has never been used on my head," he admitted, his voice heavy with the weight of his confession. "If my head were shaved, my strength would leave me, and I would become as weak as any other man." In that moment, he handed her the key to his very soul. Delilah listened, and a quiet, chilling sense of triumph filled her. She knew this time he was telling the truth. She comforted him, lulling him to sleep in her lap, his long hair spread out around him like a dark halo. While Samson slept, lost in a deep slumber of trust and exhaustion, Delilah signaled to a man waiting in the shadows. He entered silently, holding a sharp razor. With careful, deliberate motions, he cut off the 7 braids of Samson's hair. The locks that symbolized his covenant with God fell silently to the floor. As the last braid was severed, Delilah looked at the man who lay sleeping in her lap. He seemed unchanged, but she knew the divine power had departed from him. A profound and irreversible act of betrayal was complete. She then shook him awake, her voice sharp and loud. "Samson, the Philistines are upon you!" Samson awoke, his mind still clouded with sleep. He thought, "I will go out as I did before and shake myself free." He stood up, ready to unleash his legendary power, but nothing happened. He strained his muscles, but the surge of divine energy was gone. There was only the hollow feeling of ordinary human weakness. The Lord had left him. The Philistine soldiers rushed in, and this time there was no miraculous escape. They seized him easily. The champion of Israel, the strongest man who ever lived, was now helpless. His fall was not from a great blow in battle, but from a quiet betrayal in the arms of the woman he loved.